Hi, I'm Chris Lee, and this is Virtually Speaking. Joining us today is Emily Harrington, a professional rock climber and adventurer who's been a prominent and leading figure in the climbing community since she was a teenager. Her early years were defined by her successes on the USA climbing team on the national and world competition circuit, including 5 US national sport climbing championships and 2 North American championships. Emily's true passion lies with outdoor climbing and exploring the mountains. Since shifting her focus from competition, Emily has established numerous first female ascents of 5.14 sport routes, summited Everest, and has been on expeditions all over the world, attempting big wall free climbs and high altitude peaks in Nepal, China, Myanmar, Crimea, and Morocco. In 2020, Emily achieved a lifelong dream and a career milestone, becoming just the 4th woman ever to free climb El Capitan in one day, and the first to do so on the famed Golden Gate route. With a highly anticipated documentary about her story on the way later this year, Only the Sky is the Limit with Emily. So please join me now with Emily Harrington.
Good, that's it. Another inch. Perfect. Really good. That's it, come on. Really good.
Come on.
Really good.
Come on.
Nice, man. Relax.
Well, hello, Emily Harrington, and thank you for joining me on Virtually Speaking. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm very excited to have you on, and I'm very excited about you as a speaker and your story, and just everything that's been happening with you lately is so exciting and so much a part of the zeitgeist and kind of the world we live in. Of course, the Alex Honnold movie came out, the documentary that won the Oscar a couple years ago, Free Solo. And of course, he's one of your friends. Tell me a little bit about you as a rock climber. Did you start climbing rocks when you were just a little kid and you were always drawn to this, or was it something that came later in life for you?
Yeah, so I have been climbing for well over half my life,
Right.
24 years actually. So I started climbing at the age of 10. I discovered climbing like most people discover climbing nowadays. I was one of the first generations of kids who started out climbing in a climbing gym. So in an
Right.
artificial setting, plastic hold, super controlled environment. And at the time that was like all my only understanding of climbing was like indoors in a gym. But I just remember the feeling of like being really high off the ground and the feeling of almost being afraid and like confronting that fear and kind of pushing beyond it and recognizing how powerful that was, even as a
Right.
kid. That was
Wow.
really cool to me. That was something that I was really drawn to. And growing up, I was a gymnast, I was a ski racer, I was into all these things. I grew up in Colorado, and I just remember after I climbed, I went to my dad and I said, "Dad, I want to climb. That's what I want to do." And I never looked back.
And he was supportive. I know he's also an adventuresome guy, and you guys have done some fun things together as well on that front.
Yeah, my dad's awesome. He is full of energy. He loves everything that's adventurous, whether it's climbing or skiing or kite surfing. He's all in from the very beginning. So we started climbing together, actually.
Ah,
And I grew up climbing with my dad,
so
and he
awesome.
still climbs. Yeah, he's awesome.
That's so cool. Yeah, I know that after you got hurt, not the one where you became the first ever, but the one
Right.
with Alex, the one where you, I think, fell pretty far.
Yeah. Yeah, I got pretty lucky. I fell about 50 feet and I hit a ledge before the rope could catch me.
Oh my God. So
So,
the rope was, so it was basically just you falling, swinging with
mhm.
the rope, and then, or you just fell straight down into the ledge?
Yeah, I impacted on a ledge. So if you can imagine, like the rock that I was climbing wasn't like steep. So usually when you fall and it's steep, you hit air and it's super safe and it's actually quite comfortable. But I was climbing on a slab, so it was less than vertical. And
Oh
so when
yeah.
I fell, I impacted on a ledge before the rope could catch me. I was super run out, so my last piece of protection was well below me. And Alex and I were doing a type of climbing called simul climbing, where we climb simultaneously up the wall. Like you'd imagine I'm on the top and he's on the bottom, and we're like snaking our way up like a caterpillar.
Right.
And I fell, and I made a couple of mistakes along the way. I think I didn't have enough protection. I was going too fast. All of these things sort of led up to it in hindsight. Yeah, and I fell 50 feet, hit a ledge. It was the most serious accident that's ever happened to me in climbing. But
well, thank God you're okay.
Yeah,
I imagine that
kind of amazing.
Was there blood?
Yeah, there was blood. I lost consciousness.
Oh my gosh.
I had a lot of back pain and a lot of neck pain. So that was the primary concern. And I was definitely concussed. So there was a lot of like confusion going on.
Wow.
But thankfully I had Alex there with me, and he is probably maybe the best person to be with in a situation like that, because he was very calm. And then we had the rescue. Yosemite Search and Rescue came, and I was lowered in a backboard and then evacuated in an ambulance. My
goodness. And then you didn't give it up after that. You didn't stop climbing after that. This was just a little blip on the radar for you.
Yeah, I think because I knew that upon reflection, I knew what had gone wrong, and I knew that what had gone wrong was very much in my control. I knew that I had taken, I have this level of risk, this risk tolerance that I'm comfortable with, and I had pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed a little bit too far, honestly. And with the year that I took between attempting again, I came to a place where I realized that I could avoid that situation.
Yeah.
And so, for me, it wasn't a random occurrence of like, oh, this was totally out of my control and I had an accident and I almost died. It was like, oh, these were the mistakes that led up to it, and I can prevent those in the future.
Yeah.
And this is my life dream, and I'm willing to take a certain level of risk in order to get there.
Yeah. So when you were doing this with Alex, were you actually training with the goal in mind of the accomplishment you eventually accomplished? Which, by the way, just to say for everyone, you were one of only 4 people who's ever climbed El Capitan, the largest piece of granite in the world, which is how tall?
It's 3,200 feet tall.
3,200 feet. And you're one of only 4 people who climbed it in one day? Or I hear different versions of that.
Yeah, it's a little confusing. And the way that I explain it is, so I was doing something called free climbing, not to be confused with free soloing. Alex Honnold has confused the entire world with this.
Right.
Free climbing is when you use your hands and your feet to ascend a rock face, and you have a rope and protection in case you fall. And so what Alex was doing was something called free soloing, which is free climbing, but without a rope. And so with free climbing, you're allowed to fall. You're not going to die. Free soloing, if you fall, you die.
You could die if you hit the rock hard with your head and you break your head.
Much less likely, but fair point. And so what I did was I free climbed a route on El Capitan called the Golden Gate in a single day. And free climbing El Cap in a day is considered like one of the most prestigious elite forms of climbing achievements in the world, because El Cap is so famous. It's so big. It's so difficult. There are only a few paths up El Cap, only a few like ways to get up to the top, and they're all extremely difficult. And the route I did, the Golden Gate, I became the 4th person to free climb it in a day. So that the route in particular, El Cap has been free climbed in a day by maybe 20 people in history, and I became the 4th woman to do so.
Oh wow. So also the 4th woman. And is that's so amazing. And so is the Golden Gate route one of the hardest, one of the easiest routes?
It's like sort of in the middle. So so Alex did the free rider when he did his free solo. Obviously it counts because he did it in a day. It was like 3 hours.
Oh, another one who did it in a day. That's right. Oh yeah, 3 hours.
Alex has free climbed El Cap in a day a couple times actually, including the Golden Gate, and the free rider is the easiest one. Obviously he did it without ropes, so that is like,
you want to do the easiest one when there's no ropes involved.
But it's still really hard. It's still considered elite level rock climbing, and most people who free climb El Cap take like 5 to 7 days to do it.
Wow.
So they're camping and they're sleeping on the wall, and it's just
it's a journey.
It's a whole different. Yeah, it's a journey.
Oh my goodness. So you're like, I don't have time to take a rest and take a nap and eat a meal and go to sleep and take some pictures. I'm getting to the top as quick as I can.
well, so the backstory to that is in 2015, when I was first learning how to big wall free climb, which is this style of climbing where you spend multiple days or multiple days on the wall. I set my sights on Golden Gate in 2015, and I took 6 days to free climb it over the course of 6 days. And it was really, really, really at my limit at the time. It was like, I was maxed every day. It was my proudest achievement at the time. And then I started thinking about what my next challenge could be and what might have like a really distinct show of progression for me in my climbing. And so I realized that maybe free climbing El Cap in a day would be a really cool objective. I've just always been inspired by the idea of starting at the bottom of that piece of stone and climbing and not stopping until you reach the top.
Yeah.
I just think it's an incredible physical and mental challenge that kind of gathers all of the experiences and skills that you need as a climber. You have to apply them to this essentially it comes down to one day, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's absolutely cool, and it's absolutely amazing and ridiculous. I mean, I remember when I was in 7th grade, we went to Yosemite, and they walked us over to Half Dome, and they walked us over to the waterfall and all these different cool spots, and they're like, and there's El Cap. And you could see the tour guide guy, he was most excited about El Cap. And therefore, I think we all became most excited. And I like how there's that little like prairie underneath it.
Yeah, El Cap Meadow.
It kind of opens up, and he was able to like so we had a picnic there, and just looked at it the whole time. And he's like, that's the largest piece of granite in the world. And we were pretty excited about that. And of course, I love telling everybody that whenever it comes up. And they're like, oh, that's great. Thanks for telling me. But I think at the time people were jumping off of it, with the hang gliders, which is insane as well. 3,200 feet up. And then I don't even know if there were people climbing it that day, or even we even knew people could even attempt that. So at some point you're like climbing the walls in these gyms as a kid. And then you start climbing rocks with your dad outside. And then you're like, let's go to the biggest one. I mean, I guess everybody has that on their radar of the ultimate rock or the ultimate wall, they call it, to climb is El Cap. And just, it's interesting, in the last year, so much has happened with it in the last couple of years, I should say. Alex was on 60 Minutes and the documentary came out, and then you did yours as well, which got a lot of coverage. You were on the Today Show and all kinds of other programs and really cool shows about it. That I think I don't know who did there was a documentary short film or movie made.
The North Face there's a film of me on my first 6-day attempt of the Golden Gate.
Wow.
And that's on the North Face. There's a film, it's 16 minutes long. It's on their YouTube channel.
Right.
But there will be a feature film about sort of my journey towards doing it in a day. Because I've had a filmer with me the entire way, essentially, for the last few years.
That is awesome. That's going to be a very successful film. Is it going to be more of like a drama doc or more of like a doc?
It's a doc, and it's sort of my life as a rock climber and how I started and all the steps that it took to get me to that place, and the missteps along the way.
Yeah, no pun intended, the missteps. So when you were doing the tandem thing with Alex, how long ago was that? Was that just that you said it was a year or so before you did you accomplished what you accomplished?
Yeah, that was I've tried in total to free climb the Golden Gate in a day 4 times. I succeeded on my 4th attempt.
Okay.
But leading up to each attempt, there were many, many days spent like on the wall, on sections of the wall. So I'd like rappel in and I'd climb up from the bottom and I'd try so leading up to each attempt, there was probably a dozen or so days and an entire season essentially of work to pick that perfect day, to find the weather window, to go for it. And so I actually tried with Alex I've tried with Alex every time. I tried with him in spring of 2019 and we got shut down with like this crazy hailstorm. I tried in the fall of 2019 with Alex, and that was my best attempt up until the success. I actually made it 300 feet from the top and failed.
Oh my God.
Essentially failed on like 15 feet of climbing. Like if I had completed that 15-foot section, I would have gone to the top because it gets much easier.
Oh, that must have been very disappointing.
It was heartbreaking. But, it was actually one of those moments where you have these goals, you have these dreams that you set for yourself, and you're not sure that they're entirely possible. And it was that like aha moment where I was like, oh my God, oh, I can actually do it now.
Good.
Like
Yeah,
I didn't know if I was capable until that experience. And then that's when I really wanted it. Like that's when I really started to want it badly. And then I tried 2 weeks later, which, you know, in hindsight, one of the mistakes was trying again, like so soon after.
right.
And that's when I had the bad accident and I fell 50 feet. And then the season was over. That was 2019, November. Then I was going to come back in the spring of 2020, but you know, 2020 spring, that was COVID. Yosemite was closed. So I just like spent a lot of time like in my house. Like you can see I have a pull-up bar right there. Like I just spent a lot of time on my pull-up bar, like training and thinking about Yosemite, and then came back in this past fall and succeeded.
I mean,
finally.
when you're on Yosemite rock climbing so often, it must seep into your dreams. You must be dreaming about it as well.
Yeah, you dream about it, you have nightmares about it, you visualize. They got to the point where I had written down almost every section of the wall and like memorized at least all the important moves. Everything. I knew everything.
Right. That's insane. That's like a musician who has it all charted out.
Yeah,
exactly what they have to play every beat. And people don't realize there's so much nuance and specificity and exact, knowledge of what you're doing, which is so cool. You know, there's people in many different walks of life who are experts and the best ever at what they do, and it all comes down to just knowing all of these details. So it's pretty cool to find that out and to see people map it out like that, and to hear that you did that. So fear has really got to come into, your head a lot when you're thinking about it, but when you're actually doing it as well. I'm sure it doesn't just kind of like float away, or maybe it does. Maybe for you, when you're on the wall, the fear leaves you and you're just kind of focused on the matter at hand. How do you deal with fear?
Yeah, I really, really enjoy talking about fear because it doesn't go away. It's not, I think, there are people like Alex Honnold who don't really identify with fear in the same way that a lot of us do. Like, I really don't think I don't think he has the same like emotional response to it as a lot of people. And I'm a person who has always struggled with fear. I've always kind of tried to figure out, when I was younger, it was like I was really hard on myself. I felt a lot of shame and a lot of guilt for feeling fear and for being afraid.
Of what?
fear of failing, fear of the exposure, fear of the height, like all of that to me was like a weakness, and you're always taught when you're a kid. And especially as a young girl, I think I was always trying to like keep up with the boys, especially in the sport that's relatively male dominated. And you're always taught that like, oh, girls are meant to be afraid, girls are scared. And for me, I was always fighting that. And I was always like, oh man, like I can't be afraid. I'm not supposed to be afraid. I need to be stronger. I need to beat my fear. I need to conquer my fear. And I found that to be a very counterproductive experience. So instead, when I talk about fear, when I process fear myself, it's more about recognizing why it's there and acknowledging that it's there. And I almost think of it almost like another little like a little like spirit. It's just like sitting there. I acknowledge it. I let it be there. I kind of let myself feel it. I let it wash over me. And then I try to take like the tiniest little steps to push beyond the fear, like just to push the envelope of my comfort zone a little bit. And then when that place gets comfortable, then I push a little bit further. And so it's more about like getting comfortable with the fear and getting comfortable with the discomfort of it. I think that's how we ultimately progress as humans. And I think a lot of times when we feel difficult emotions, we feel a lot of shame and guilt for feeling those emotions. But in reality, they're just human emotions that we all experience. Like, I'm not different from anyone else in terms of the fact that I don't feel fear, that I'm like an adrenaline junkie, anything like that. Like those are things that are really uncomfortable for me as well. I've just spent a lot of time dissecting it and analyzing why it's happening and learning to work with it.
And to be comfortable with it. And
being comfortable with being uncomfortable is ultimately what it is.
Well, I mean, if you could be comfortable being uncomfortable, you could pretty much achieve anything and nothing will stop you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And does the fear also make you more careful and make you more like precise with your moves and makes you plan harder and take more care in what you're doing? Because that, for me, that's what fear does for me, is like make me more, okay, let's not let that thing that we're afraid of happen.
Yeah, I think it makes me think more carefully about the risk that I'm taking, but I wouldn't say that it makes me take less risk, if that makes sense. Like,
But it makes you take more care with the risks.
Yes, it makes me calculate the risk with care, I suppose. Like I took more risk. This objective that I had was far more dangerous than anything I've ever done in climbing, and I had I've got injured over it. I had an accident over it. But to me, I was always going back to the drawing board and thinking of, okay, is this worth it? Is this worth the risk? Where can I cut corners in a way that I recognize is dangerous, but that I'm comfortable with, and where can I maintain a certain level of safety, is sort of like the analysis that I was constantly going through. And it's pretty fluid, right? Like it's kind of a constant process of analyzing what I'm comfortable with and what I'm not comfortable with. Yeah, I think it causes me to calculate risk instead of just like going for it willy-nilly.
Which anybody who does that's just going to fall off the mountain and they're not going to do well.
Potentially, yes.
But you do have to take risks and cut corners in order to do it in one day, right? I mean, this isn't the same. I mean, you said it's the same path, but it's a different path up the same path, right?
Yeah. So I was cutting quite a few corners. Like that strategy that I was talking about with Alex and I climbing simultaneously, called simul climbing, is very risky. It's highly, there's a lot of places where you really can't fall or you shouldn't fall. We're cutting corners because I'm not using as much gear, because we're covering such a larger distance of rock before like switching over. And so, so I was placing gear, but you only have so much gear, and I had to spread it out over 1,500 feet instead of 150 feet.
Wow.
If that makes sense. So that's why that's why the long distances between protection. But the climbing for me and for Alex in those sections is relatively easy. And so I was very confident in our skills and our ability to not fall. And that's why I was comfortable cutting the corner.
Right.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
And just to let everybody know, and to explain this, when you have ropes, and the actual type of climb you achieved when you did this in one day with rope is called a what? What kind of climb is it?
Free climb.
A free climb. Not a free solo, which when you have no rope.
Right.
It's a free climb.
Yeah.
And it's not free because you didn't have to pay for it. It's free because of...
You're not using aid. So there's another style.
So the ropes aren't there to help you up.
No, you're not using
there to help you from falling, or when you fall.
Keep you from dying. Yeah, they just keep you from dying. So aid climbing is the way that most people ascend El Cap, because El Cap is too hard to free climb for most people.
Aid climbing.
So aid climbing is when you like place the gear in the cracks, and then you pull on the gear and you like stand in it, and then you place another piece, and then you stand it like a ladder, kind of, and then the person below you just comes up the rope.
So easy that way.
Easier, significantly easier, for sure.
Wow, that's insane. That is crazy. So, so what do you do? What do you do next? I mean, I know that part of the story, when you got really injured, you didn't just go and chill out for a month and let yourself recover. I know you had a concussion. You said you lost consciousness. What did you do? I know that there's a little twist to the story. Within a week of that being rescued, you did something else. Yeah.
So I had this plan, going back to the story with my dad. My dad is someone who is still at age 65. He has a lot of goals. He's really motivated. And leading up to my November 2019, we had signed my dad up for this trip to Ecuador to go and climb a 19,000 foot volcano down in Ecuador called Cayembe. My fiance, Adrian Bellinger, he owns a guide company, and they take people on these trips all over the world, like high altitude climbing trips. And so Adrian and I decided that this would be, my dad he's like really into climbing mountains. He wants to climb El Cap someday. He's got all these goals. And so I told him, 6 months prior, you should start training. We got to go climb this volcano, and you're going to love it. And you're going to be so psyched. So he spent months and months training. He was like in the gym with the backpack on the Stairmaster, like doing it all. And go figure, a week before we're supposed to leave for Ecuador, I gave my attempt and I fell. And I had this concussion and, serious fear of spinal injury and all these things. But then when I was able to walk out of the hospital with no serious injuries, I decided the same night. Yeah, I walked out of that hospital.
Which is insane. You went into the hospital having been rescued and you came home that night.
Yeah, super. I mean, I honestly think I was very lucky, like incredibly lucky to fall 50 feet and not suffer any serious injuries. I had a torn ligament in my neck actually, and in my arm. I had this crazy rope burn on my neck, and
I've seen those
symptoms.
Pictures.
Yeah, it was intense.
There's your.
This is from this year.
Oh, that's
this one's from this year.
That's from the one you did. When did you do the free climb?
November 4th, 2020.
Okay. So anyway, going back to, you left the hospital.
Yeah.
All these injuries.
Left the hospital, went home to Tahoe, actually went to the doctor, and she was like, don't go to Ecuador. You have a concussion. Don't go to altitude. Like, don't do any of that.
Yeah.
And I just felt, I think like any person with my personality, I was like, well, I'm going to go to Ecuador because this is my dad's dream trip. Like I can handle getting on a plane. I can handle going to Ecuador, and then I can just start feeling it out. So we go to Ecuador with my dad.
How many days later did you go to Ecuador?
I think we left 4 or 5 days later.
Oh my gosh.
We got on a plane. I had like a neck pillow, Yeah. And flew down to Ecuador, which Adrian and I have been to Ecuador a lot. We actually love that country. It's wonderful. We're actually getting married there in November or December this year. Yeah, exciting. So so anyway, we spent a few weeks acclimatizing, going on hikes, and I just I realized that I was actually okay, and I thought that I could climb this volcano with my dad. So we I think maybe early December 2019. We climbed a 19,000 foot volcano, me and my dad and Adrian and a couple friends. And I actually skied down with Adrian, which was really cool. And it was my dad was like so proud. It was the coolest thing he's ever done in his entire life. So I'm really glad that I made the decisions that I did and kept going.
I think when you came out of that hospital, you actually probably came out of the hospital because of your dad, because you knew that trip was a week or so away, and you. Yeah. I think the whole time you probably were motivated.
Yeah, it was
right.
It was really on my mind. I remember like being in the hospital and like having them come back and be like, "Oh, the X-rays came back clean, like MRIs came back clean," and I was like, in my head, the wheels were turning. I was like, "Okay, maybe I can still go to Ecuador." Wow.
That's unbelievable. So what's next for you? I feel like, I'm in my late 40s now, and I go to answer the phone and I pull a muscle. I'm picking my kids up, my back, my neck, I'm hurting all the time with all the just a normal life activities. So people who are like doing what you're doing as you get into your 40s and older, what do you do next? You're going to start getting a lot more injured. Your body's not going to necessarily be able to recover from that kind of a 50-foot free fall into a ledge. What do you focus on now? Because you're very goal oriented, obviously.
Yeah, and it's something that I think about a lot. Obviously, I'm 34, and I still have some big goals that I'm really, really excited about. And
you're not going to free solo El Cap, right?
I'm not going to free solo El Cap. It's not my thing. Good. I think it's like a once in every other generation type of person. Yeah. No, I think I'd like to free climb El Cap again. I'd like to do I'd like to do some other big expeditions. I used to travel the world. Obviously, a lot of us used to travel the world pre-COVID, and I'm really looking forward to doing that a little bit more. I think, like you said, obviously, like my body is not going to be able to handle a lot of a lot of things that it does now, and it used to, as I get older. But I do believe that I've still got a while, and
Yeah.
I do believe that I can be a rock climber forever.
Right.
I really do, as long as I'm smart about it, and as long as I think as I've gotten older, I've learned a lot more about my body and how I handle it and how I handle things, and I've learned a lot more about rest and recovery, and I'm a much smarter athlete than I was before. And I'm actually a better rock climber than I've ever been before.
Right.
So I'm pretty excited about that. And then I'm just, I want to have a family someday. I want to continue to tell my story to others and to share it, because I think that's also really impactful for the world.
Absolutely.
So I'm looking forward to continuing to be a rock climber, continuing to push myself, at least, push myself at the highest level for a few more years, before hopefully, diving into the adventure of having a family.
Yeah, a whole nother adventure.
And continuing to climb with them. Yeah.
Right. Oh my gosh. And then, being the excited parent for your kids, endeavors and whatever they do. I think that people who do what you do are meant to do it, because in a lot of ways it's an example for the rest of us. I mean, and if you look at the analogy and the metaphor of it being a wall, like a canvas, like, like an artist would do something with, you're doing something artistic, but you're also displaying for everybody, the overcoming of fear and the setting of goals and achieving them. And then also this accomplishment, and a lot of people think that these accomplishments are just one person alone climbing a rock. No, I mean, I've come to know that there's a team of people around you to make it work. And I've been hearing this a lot lately. You got to have a great team around you. You've got to do things with those around you, helping you all accomplish a certain goal. So you really are an incredible picture of that, because this whole time we've been talking about you. All the movies are going to be about you. All the news reports are going to be about you. But it's more, Tom Brady can say it was the team. It wasn't just me. I'm not the GOAT without my team. But we all know there's a team. With you, we don't even know there's a team. So how does that come to play into it with the people around you?
Yeah, well, obviously it's super important because, with climbing with a rope, I'm on one end of the rope. There has to be someone on the other end of the rope. And especially with objectives like climbing big walls and climbing mountains, there is very much that partnership aspect, and that can honestly make or break a success.
Right.
And it can make or break, like life and death in a lot of ways. That partnership is honestly, it's one of the most important things that I've garnered through my climbing, is understanding how to receive support and how to be supportive when you're in a place of extreme vulnerability. So there's a lot of times when you're on the side of a cliff and you are tired and you are hungry and you are cold, and that is the last place that you want to be. And your partner feels exactly the same way, and you've got to figure it out. And so, for me, it's been years of finding those partnerships and finding the people that work best with me, and utilizing each other's strengths and weaknesses in order to be successful. And a lot of times, especially with stuff like LCAP, that person who's supporting you has to have just as many skills and just as much experience as you do, if not more, in order to be a successful partner. And for me, it took a lot of strategy to try to figure out how I wanted my team and how I was going to make it all work for the one day. Honestly, on the day that I succeeded, I actually had two climbing partners. I had Alex for the first 2/3 of the route, and then I switched over to Adrian, my fiance, for the last part, when I went into like the second night, and we're going into like hour 18, and I really needed like my life partner there to provide that emotional support and that empathy. Adrian, he likes to say that I traded Alex's speed for his empathy.
Oh, wow.
So I climbed like the first 2/3 of the route with Alex because he's the fastest, he's the most competent, he's the most experienced LCAP climber there is. And then when it got really hard, and then when I really needed that person there to be my emotional supporter, that's when Adrian came in and we swapped out. And then you also have, you know, especially for a professional athlete like me, I also have like the film crew, and they've got their own logistics. Like there's someone there holding the camera, documenting the whole time. And there's someone that has to support him as well, because having a camera up there, that's obviously a lot. That's a lot of stuff and a lot to manage as well. So yeah, the team was crucial, and it always is crucial. And it can become even more so depending on the objective. And I think for me in climbing, that's one of the most valuable things I've received through climbing, was the gift of these partnerships and these friendships.
Yeah. And so you said that this injury here was the one that happened on this last November's success. So wait, so you hit your head again on the success?
I did. Yeah.
On the way up, and was there a lot of blood again?
Yeah, this time it was less serious because I didn't lose consciousness, but there was more like traumatic looking. Also, I was much higher off the ground, so I was like 300 feet from the summit instead of being like really close to the ground.
You're
and
almost there.
I was almost there. It was almost to where I had gotten to the really good try the year before, and I tried in the sun. I was rushing. I really wanted to like get this part over with. I'd never fallen on it before, and I slipped. Climbing the sun's actually quite hard. It's not very good. The friction gets really bad. Yeah, you get sweaty. The rock gets hot. Everything's slippery. And El Cap is pretty south facing, so it's like kind of bakes in the sun all day. And obviously when you're doing it in a day, you got to climb in the sun. So I was climbing the sun. I slipped and fell, and I came off sideways. And I honestly don't know what happened. It felt like a very normal fall, but the next thing I knew was like the world went black and I had like the stars. And I just could feel like the blood. Head wounds bleed a lot, and there was a lot of blood. I had like punctured my head right here. It was like a hole. And that was a real low point of.
How come your hands don't stop the body from hitting the wall there?
That was
like
what
sideways.
That's what I mean by I came sideways.
Yeah.
I came off like sideways, and usually you get your feet under you and you can kind of like brace yourself with your feet. But this time it was like my hip kind of checked the wall, and then my head like bounced off of it. It was very bizarre. I've seen the footage. It's really, really bad.
Because it's going to be in the movie, right?
Yeah, it'll be in the movie.
So I interrupted you. You were saying, so this was a real low point at that moment, obviously. You're like, oh my God, again, the head.
Yeah. Again, I lowered down to the beginning. There's this little ledge, and Adrian sort of assessed me for concussion symptoms, and I was like, I don't think I have a concussion.
So it's good that he was there.
This is bad. Oh yeah, exactly. He was there. Filmer was there. His supporter was there. There's actually a couple of friends of mine are mountain guides. They have the wilderness first responder training. So I had a lot of support around me. And that was actually where the team aspect was incredibly crucial, because I had that feeling of like, almost like I was drained. Like everything had been going so well. I felt like I was going to be so successful. It was all good. And then this happened. And there was a part of me that was like, oh no, this is just like last year. I'm going to fail. It's all over. I got to be done. I can't do this. I can't complete this section. There was just like all these doubts. And there's this moment, I actually have it on video, where Adrian and my filmer, John, they're like, you have fight left in you. Like, you can do this. You need to get back up there and try again. You're not that injured. Like, well, we're going to put a Band-Aid on it, and you should try again. And, you know, there was a part of me that was like, yeah, I owe it to myself to try again. I deserve this. I can do this. And I still do have fight left in me. But there was another part of me that was super tired and exhausted and drained and scared. Like, that fear started creeping back in. Like, what if it happens again? What if I fall like that again? I gave myself this ultimatum, thanks to like that sort of like uplifting vibe from the crew and the team. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try one more time. I'm going to go one move at a time. And I'm only going to think about one move at a time. I'm not going to think about 300 feet above me, which is what I still had left. I'm not going to think about all the hard climbing. I'm going to think about this, like right here, this what's in front of me. And I had this really bizarre, almost like out of body experience where like I let go of all expectations. I had no like concern for failure or success. And it was almost like I was like watching myself climb, you know. It was
Wow.
like I had this moment where I think, you know, athletes have these flow state experiences. I think they're pretty hard to access, but I think I accessed it somehow between like the emotional roller coaster and then just like letting go of all of those expectations and all the worries. And there were moments where I was literally thinking to myself, why are you still holding on? Like, why is this still happening? How is this still happening? And I was just
Wow.
on autopilot. And
Wow.
I reached the end of that section and like everyone around, like I started crying, everyone around me started crying.
Oh my gosh.
There were it was super emotional.
Yeah.
And it was one of those moments where I overcame this thing and all of these people witnessed it and all these people were part of it. And then that was just the ignition that I needed, and I was able to continue and be successful.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, you know, you think about how tired you are and you're like the one who trained for all of this. And yet you've got all these people around you. And how tired must they be? How sick of it must they be? In some
Oh
way,
yeah.
they're rooting for you, but in some ways, you're probably feeling guilty. So it must be so wonderful to hear them all say, "You've got more left inside you, and we think you can do this." That's probably a huge part of
Yes.
letting go of that guilt and the worry about them.
Yeah, and I think, you know, through the years I've gotten to a place where I didn't really have that guilt at that moment, just because I knew how committed they were to me. And I knew there's actually a footage from the previous year when I fell and I failed 300 feet from the top, and I'm actually apologizing to them
Ah,
profusely, like, I'm sorry, I'm
yeah,
sorry, I'm sorry.
yeah,
And you know, that was something I had to learn to get over, is like not to feel guilt about that either, because that also sucks energy.
yeah.
And so, you know, when we went up there together, we truly were like this very, very cohesive unit with a lot of honesty and a lot of truth, and a lot of good communication. And I think, yeah, like you said, they were just as invested in it as I was, which is why they also had like such emotional reactions
Right.
to everything that I was doing and everything that was happening to me. You know, and they even said it. They were like, "Wow, you really like to bring us all to the brink of collapse and, you know, emotional breakdown, and then you just like deliver and bring us all back up to here."
That's
Um,
awesome.
so
Well, I
yeah, it
can't
was a
wait to
pretty
see the
powerful
movie.
journey.
I
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
It culminates. I mean, that's the end. That's the ending of the movie, I would assume.
Yeah, I think so. I think that that'll be the end of the movie. I'm not
When
sure yet.
when is that supposed to come out?
We're thinking fall, this fall.
Oh wow, that's
So
great.
it's in the works.
Any
Yeah,
title yet
yeah,
for it?
yeah. No title yet. We don't. We're still working on the title. I'm working with my filmer, and we're sort of like sorting through all of those details at the moment.
That is so cool that all of this has been documented. And
Yeah, I'm pretty excited.
yeah, that'll be really cool to watch and so inspiring. And that's why everybody wants to book you. You've been so in demand as a speaker lately, and everybody's just excited about your journey and about your message. And obviously, you know are still in the middle of this journey, and you're going to continue to do amazing things. But sharing all of this with everybody about the teamwork aspect and the overcoming fear and the goal setting and everything that you talk about, these are really important points for everyone usually, but even more so in the pandemic, because you know right now people have a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty. They're giving up, they don't have the drive, they don't see the vision of what's going to happen, they don't have a vision, they're not willing to create a vision. You know, so all of these lessons and themes that you're talking about are really relevant right now. So I'm really happy that I've booked you, and that people are finding out about you, and that there's somebody like you out there who's relevant, who's current, who's doing this and just accomplished something amazing. So congratulations to you for that, and thank you for all of that as well.
Well, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here, and I truly love sharing my story,
I
and
know.
it's really cool to see people relate to it so well. And I love talking about these topics, especially today in today's world.
Yeah. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. It's obvious that you love what you do as a climber and as a thought leader in these areas. So it's been wonderful talking to you. I've been looking forward to this, and thank you so much for doing it. And good luck with everything. Good luck with the film. Good luck with all the next climbs. Have fun and stay safe. And I'll talk to you again in the future.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.